Imagine standing in a Sumerian temple around 2100 BCE. Incense wafts through the air as priest-physician whispers chants in Sumerian while rubbing crushed herbs into a clay bowl. He's both healer and mystic. Medicine here is not just science, it's divine ritual. But what if I told you that the roots of your modern pharmacy, the pill you take, the antiseptic wipe you use, can all be traced to this ancient world? This is the untold story of medicine, not just the well-known rise of Hippocrates or the discovery of antibiotics, but of forgotten scholars, hidden papyri and rituals that echo into modern practice. The earliest recorded medical texts come from Mesopotamia. Cuneiform tablets dating back over 4,000 years detail treatments for wounds, digestive issues, epilepsy, and even psychological conditions. What's extraordinary is that these ancient people distinguished clearly between magical and empirical healing. One practitioner would exorcise demons, the other would apply poultices and stitches. They understood very well the concept of contagion and quarantine, evacuating entire villages in response to disease outbreaks and isolating the sick from the rest of the healthy people. The Sumerians used over 250 medicinal plants, including myrrh and mandrake. They identified the antiseptic properties of cedar oil and employed willow bark for pain, a practice we now understand pharmacologically through salicylic acid, the basis of modern aspirin. Now let us travel south to the ancient Egypt around 1500 BCE. In the medical papyri, Ebers, originally purchased by Edwin Smith in 1862, we find a remarkably advanced system of diagnostics, treatments and surgical procedures. Egyptian healers differentiated between diseases of the heart, liver and bladder using empirical observation. They could set fractures, suture wounds, and even perform rudimentary neurosurgery. And the drugs? Onion and garlic were used for circulatory health, pomegranate bark to treat tapeworms, and honey as an antibacterial dressing, a practice validated by modern clinical studies. And then comes Imhotep, the vizier turned god of medicine, considered by many historians to be the world's first named physician. He practiced over 2,000 years before Hippocrates was even born. Born around 2667 BCE, Imhotep served as vizier to Pharaoh Djoser. While best known as the architect of Egypt's first pyramid, Imhotep was also revered as a physician. So effective was his approach and knowledge that he was deified as the god of medicine centuries after his death. His methods may have contributed to the Edwin Smith Papyrus, a surgical text that reads like a modern trauma manual. It classifies 48 cases by injury, details anatomical observations and outlines treatment and prognosis. No magical incantations, just facts. Clinical, methodical, revolutionary. Egyptian physicians knew how to suture wounds, set broken bones, and even drain cranial abscesses. They used metal scalpels, linen bandages, catheters, forceps and speculums, tools that mirror today's surgical sets. Remedies came from nature. Honey was used as an antiseptic, and the fruit of Amimagus was used for skin disorders like vitiligo, which is now a source of 8-methoxypsiralin used in therapy today. Meanwhile, in India, the Ayurvedic tradition flourished. The ancient physician, Sushruta, performed cataract surgeries with curved needles and pioneered rhinoplasty using cheek flaps, a method that would re-emerge centuries later in Renaissance Europe. Sushruta's treatise, the Sushruta Samhita, outlined over 300 surgical procedures and 120 surgical instruments. Ayurveda emphasized balance of doshas, diet and spirit. Remarkably, its ideas about preventive medicine and holistic care are echoed today in lifestyle and integrative medical practices. In ancient China, the Yellow Emperor's classic of internal medicine, or Huangdi Neijing, introduced acupuncture pulse diagnosis and herbal classification over 2,000 years ago. Ginseng for energy, Ma Huang, ephedra for asthma and artemisia for malaria were staples long before they entered Western medicine's radar. In fact, artemisinin, derived from Artemisia annua, remains one of the most effective anti-malarial drugs to this day. These systems weren't just folklore, they were comprehensive frameworks, often supported by clinical observation and codified education. Now let's pivot to Greece. While the name Hippocrates looms large as the father of medicine, it is crucial to remember he stood on the shoulders of ancient cultures. What made his approach revolutionary was his insistence on rationalism, medicine separated from divine wrath. He emphasized the importance of environmental factors, diet and lifestyle, and urged physicians to keep detailed case notes. The Hippocratic Oath, albeit in modern form, is still recited today. Greek physicians understood mental health as part of physical health. Melancholy, hysteria, mania, they classified them, observed them, and sought physical remedies. Mental illness was not demonic possession, it was dysfunction. That insight alone was centuries ahead of its time. While Greek medicine thrived, Roman medicine scaled it. Galen, a Greek physician working in Rome in the 2nd century CE, became the medical authority in Europe for over 1,000 years. His anatomical studies, largely based on animal dissection, were codified into medieval university curricula. Yet ironically, his dominance may have stalled innovation. Challenging Galen's work was often seen as heresy, and severely punished were those who dared to offer any new information or methods. And then came the Islamic Golden Age. In Baghdad's House of Wisdom, scholars like Al-Razi and Ibn Sina translated Greek, Indian, and Persian medical texts. Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine became the definitive medical reference in Europe until the 17th century. He championed evidence-based clinical trials and described contagious diseases, including tuberculosis. Al-Sarawi, a surgeon from Cordoba, pioneered surgical instruments and techniques still recognizable in modern ORs. Meanwhile, in medieval Europe, medical advancement stagnated in part due to the Church's dominance over knowledge. Illness was considered divine punishment. Dissections were taboo. Yet in monasteries, monks preserved ancient texts and experimented with herbal remedies. Yarrow for wounds, valerian for anxiety, and willow bark for fever continued their quiet journey through time. Enter Renaissance, a time where everything changed. Vesalius dared to dissect cadavers, challenging Galen's anatomy. Paracelsus, often misunderstood, introduced chemical pharmacology, believing that poisons in small doses could cure. The dose makes the poison, he declared, an idea foundational to toxicology. By the 18th and 19th centuries, medicine entered the age of empiricism, yet not without its own problems. Ridiculing any new proposals or discoveries became a common practice. Resistance to diverse opinion or discoveries not aligning with the narrative of the time was slowing down progression considerably, something that is still seen today in scientific community. This was also the time when first vaccination emerged, pioneered by Edward Jenner, who observed that milkmaids were immune to smallpox, having had previously caught cowpox. Semmelweis proposed hand-washing in obstetrics, only to be ridiculed. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch finally established germ theory, demolishing centuries of miasma theory and opening the door to antiseptics, sterilization, and antibiotics. But medicine's path was not without darkness. In ancient Rome, physicians would slice open veins or use leeches, sometimes draining a litre or more of blood, leaving patients weakened or dead. This practice persisted for nearly 2 millennia. In medieval Europe, the collapse of classical knowledge led to reliance on religious and folk remedies. Monasteries preserved medical texts, but also saw the rise of dangerous treatments. Worse, afflictions like epilepsy or schizophrenia were viewed as signs of possession, leading to brutal exorcisms. In the 1600s, speed was the surgeon's greatest skill. With saws and knives, limbs were hacked off in seconds, with nothing but alcohol or a leather strap to bite on. Infection and shock were often fatal. During the Enlightenment, scientific revolutions transformed anatomy and physiology. Andreas Vesalius in 1543 published De Humani Corporis Fabrica, correcting centuries of anatomical error. Yet horrors continued. In the 18th century, smallpox inoculation involved slicing the skin and placing infectious pus into the wound. Fever, purging and bloodletting followed. "Thus, through the mercy of God, I have been preserved," wrote Peter Thatcher in 1764 after surviving such an ordeal. In the 19th century, ether and chloroform introduced the age of anesthesia. This, combined with Lister's antisepsis and Pasteur's germ theory, revolutionized surgery. Hospitals shifted from death houses to places of healing. But even in the 20th century, darkness lingered. The Guatemala syphilis experiments in the 1940s saw US researchers infecting subjects, including prisoners and sex workers, without consent, many of whom were never treated. It remains one of the most disturbing episodes in medical ethics. And here we are today, in hospitals equipped with robotics, gene therapy and AI diagnostics, yet still reliant on the observations made by Mesopotamians, Egyptians, Indians, Chinese, Greeks and Arabs. We still search for and use plants for medicine. We still take pulse and we still ask about your symptoms. So, next time you unwrap a bandage or take a tablet, remember that action began thousands of years ago, perhaps with a Sumerian priest grinding herbs into a bowl. We've come a long way from shamans and scrolls, but the story of medicine is still being written. Today, we stand on the shoulders of thousands of years of trial, error, and often terrible suffering. From crushed herbs and mystical chants to gene therapy and robotic surgery, the history of medicine is not just a tale of progress, it is the story of what it means to be human, to suffer, to heal, and to hope. Let us know which historical fact surprised you most. What do you think modern medicine can still learn from ancient practices? Leave a comment. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story of resilience, science, and the eternal human quest for healing. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.